One of the most popular features built into the Darwin Business System is the custom alert features that allows PEOs and ASOs to send custom alerts based upon any data points they're tracking with the clients and employees. And these alerts can be sent out to the customers and employees themselves, or for internal purposes, for letting internal users know about critical items that need attention at that time. In this scenario, I'm actually going to use email as my alert, but these alerts can be published in a variety of formats. They can be set up on a dashboard, they can be used as typical tasks and calendar items in Outlook or your email system, and they can also be used for on-screen notifications in the back office. But what this video is going to show you is basically how to set up an email notification similar to this one right here. What we're going to do is we're going to say either the employee themselves signing in through the web, or the client on the employee's behalf, or somebody in the back office comes in and changes the state for the employee. So we want the tax department to get a notification this employee's state has changed, check to make sure their current default tax state is correct, or whatever else you might need to do whenever the data point like this changes. I'm just using state as this example, but basically any data point in the system we can create these custom alerts. And they're fairly simple to do. It doesn't really need very many technical skills to create something like this. So as opposed to the other videos which are more demo oriented, this will be more of a to-do, how to do something video, which will show you actually how to create this simple workflow. It's going to be a simple one-step workflow, sending this email if an employee changes their state in the address. Okay, so let's start actually building this workflow. So the first step is going into the settings area of the system, and we'll go into the area called processes underneath the process center. And workflows are a type of process, so that's what we'll be working with right here. So I'll go ahead and click my new button and create the new process. So we'll say alert for employee state change, and we're going to send that by email, so I'm just going to note that in the title of the process. So this can be whatever you want. It's just a name for this process, so you or some other user will know why this workflow was actually created in the first place. The entity is really just simply what are we working with. So where does that data field live? Well, it's just if the employee changes their state, so it's the employee entity. And the category in this case will be a workflow itself. So by clicking OK, I get to the kind of the workflow definition screen right here. This defines what the workflow is going to do and when it's going to run. Be very simple process. We're just saying when that field changes, we're going to send an email. So changing a couple things right here. First of all, the scope. We're going to change that to organization, because that just means every employee in the company, if they change their state, we'll get an email. Once again, if you had a high volume of state changes, you wouldn't use email. You'd put it on a dashboard for somebody to review, because you don't want them getting thousands of emails. Once again, this can also be used for a confirmation email back to the employee, where if the employee goes in and changes their state, they'll get a confirmation email back from you saying, we recorded your state change, here's the new value. So just another option, and why you can use emails to communicate with your clients and employees. Now here's the start when. That means, when does this workflow run? Right now you see this checkbox is checked off by default whenever you create a workflow. What this means is whenever there's a new one of whatever entity we're working with, in this case employee. So whenever there's a new employee, this workflow would run. Well, that's not true in this case. We're going to uncheck that because we're only concerned with existing employees changing their state. This was very valuable when you're doing something like an onboarding workflow or a new client workflow, etc. That's when you'll really be using things like the record is created start wins. But in this case, we're just saying whenever a field changes, run this workflow. So we'll select this box right here, click the select button, and we'll get a list of all the custom and standard fields that are available to us. So if I scroll down, I can go ahead and just find the state field in the system, and here it is. So click on state, click OK, and it's set up and ready to go. So what will happen is whenever that field changes, which in this case was the state field I just checked off, whatever I define here will actually go ahead and process. And like I said, this is going to be a simple one-step workflow. So the only thing we need to do is click the Add Step button, and as opposed to doing any of these other things like checking conditions or waiting for a date or anything like that, we're just going to go ahead and send the email immediately. So we just choose to send email, and we're putting a description in here, send tax department email about employee state change. And we could do multiple emails too. I could click on send email again too. If I have a different email going to the tax department than an email going to the employee. Once again, we're just going to send one internal email in this case. So by clicking set properties, I get to my email definition screen right here. And this is where I can put in static or dynamic values. So a static value would be, I always want it to, in this case in the from field, I always want it to come from a certain user, as opposed to the owner of the employee. So if I chose owner of the employee, whoever owns that employee in my company, whoever is responsible for that employee, that'd be the from. In this case, I'm going to do a static value just so we see the from and to when we get the results. Now I can type in part of the name, and this is my demonstration user, and it'll let me know here are the choices based upon that name. So I'll choose that name. So the from is going to be my demo user. Once again, the to is the same idea. I could say I'm going to send this out to the employee. I could click add and OK, and it would have the employee here. So when I ran this, it would actually go ahead and send it off to either the client or employee. So in this case, just for this example, I'm going to go ahead and once again choose a static field so we actually see it come in my inbox here. So I'm going to go ahead and look up my user. And I'm really just sending this to myself in this case. So we'll see that when we actually run the workflow. In real world, you probably have that set up to go to an employee, a client, etc., whatever you need to do. This is great for testing too when you're first setting these workflows up. Send it to yourself first. Make sure you like what you see, and then roll it out, change the from and to, and send it off to your clients, employees, or tax department, because you can send this off to teams too. Subject, just like you're typing a regular email, you'll put in the text and then maybe put in some static values. So something like state change notification, and then maybe some sort of separator, and then we'll put in the employee ID here, and we can actually start grabbing fields over here. This is where we start grabbing dynamic fields. So I can come in and say, okay, I want to grab the employee ID. So all I do is scroll down once again, find that field, there's employee ID, click add, make sure I've got it in the right place, and click OK. So the subject of the email when it's sent will say state change notification, employee ID, and it'll grab whatever employee we're working with. Okay, and then similar concept with the body. You just type in your email. This alert is to notify you an employee has changed their state. Please review appropriate tax information. And then once again, we can put in as much data as we want in the email. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So we'll put in new state. So we'll come into the employee record, and once again, we're going to grab that field. It says state right here. Click add and OK. We've got the prior state stored in the system, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that field also. So we're going to go in and come in and say, there's the prior state field. So we'll be able to see the old state. We're going to put that right there. We're going to put in their current default tax state. That way we can see easily in email, make sure we do a comparison. And that field is called state code in our system. So we'll go ahead and bring that field in there. And then any demographic information we might want to put in about this employee or client. So we'll grab employee name, and I'll come back over here, find the employee right here, grab that field into the system. And then in case we want to immediately call the employee or email the employee, let's throw the employee phone number on here. So we'll come in and grab their primary phone number, and then their email address. So in case we just want to go ahead and send them an email right away, we can come in and grab their email address right here. Put that in the system. And then once again, maybe we want to know a little bit about the client. So we can put in, client name. and we can actually jump what's called entities. So an employee works for a client. So I can actually go over to the client screen now if I wanted to, the client information, and I can come in and grab the client name right here. So I'm actually kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of jumping up a level from the employee to the client, but still populating the same data here. Maybe I want to contact the client. I'm going to put the client phone number in here too. In case for some reason I need to talk to them, I can come into the client phone number and put their primary phone number in here. And there it is, done. So this is a lot of information. It might be enough at this point. But what's nice about this is I can also put in custom hyperlinks right here. So basically I might say, okay, well, somebody gets this email, if they get it on their mobile device or something like that, I want them to be able to click a link and open up this employee information on screen so we can see everything about this employee. So by putting in the insert hyperlink right here, I can actually create a custom URL that will go right to that employee. So it sounds complex, but it's actually very simple. First of all, it says text to display. What this means is what text do I want to have appear on the email. So I'll just say link to employee record. And then all of these records are simply websites in the system essentially. So every employee has something called a field right here called record URL dynamic. All that means is this URL is specific to that employee. So by putting this in the email, the user will be actually able to click that link on the email itself and it'll open up the employee. It'll make sense once we see the email actually generated. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. Now you as the user see the HTML that creates this, but I didn't have to write this, and this is not what the end user sees. This is just simply for me. And you can put any signature information or attachments also at the bottom, but we'll just leave the email like this. This is good enough for this demo purposes. So here's all of our information in the system. And once I save and close this, the email template is ready to go. Now once again, like I mentioned before, I could add other steps. I could send more emails to other people. I could create tasks, appointments, anything else I need to do. But that's all I want to do for this particular workflow. I just simply click activate, and that turns the workflow on. So once I've turned the workflow on, anytime somebody changes their state in the system, this workflow will run at that point. So let's go ahead and have that happen in the system. So I'm going to jump back over to my back office and I'm going to say, okay, as opposed to them doing it themselves on the web, maybe they called up or they contacted somebody and said, all right, Melanie Rockford, she has changed her state. She changed her state from Ohio to Michigan. So once I save that data synchronizes and will kick off our actual workflow process in the system. So the end result is going to look like this one right here. This is one I did prior. But we'll actually see this in just a second. So while the workflow is running, I'll show you the one I did before while we're waiting for that new one to come in. But you can see all the data is right here. And then there's the link to the employee record. That was that hyperlink that we talked about before. So when I actually click on this, it'll actually open up that employee record right here on screen. So it goes directly from this link to employee right to Melanie Rockford, where we can see her data in the system itself. So that's what that HTML looks like in the system. Now if I was getting this in my email client, I can also see the regarding right here. So even though since the system generated this email, it's regarding Melanie. And so the workflow is finished, and that's why we've gotten the new email right here. So here it is. So here is the email we just created. This one's left over from a legacy workflow I had turned on. So this email right here shows you this alert has notify you an employee has changed your state. Please review the appropriate tax information. There's the new state, the prior state, the current tax default state, the employee name, etc. And once again, you can change the fonts and all of those things. Anything else that you want to change in the system, like I did in the old workflow, I changed the font to something I think is a little bit more readable. So you get all that control of any of your alerts in the system. Once again, if I go to Melanie Rockford's record, directly to her record, I can see under the activities every single time I've had an email go out about her. And in fact, under the audit history, I'll be able to see all the different changes that have ever happened into Melanie's record. So I can see every single time that she's had an address change in the system itself. The old value and the new value. We're storing all those different records in the system itself. So that's how easy it is to create a workflow within the system itself. It can be used upon any data point in the system, and there's no limit to the amount of workflow that you can set up in the system itself. Thank you.